There are many conversations to be had about money. Some are high stakes, some are low stakes. They can be difficult regardless of who you're having them with, when you're having them, what the content of the conversation is. But there is really some helpful insight that can enable you to enter into those conversations more prepared. Our guest is Jane Blaufus. She is the author of With the Stroke of a Pen, Claim Your Life. She joins us now to talk about difficult conversations with money. She's in Ancaster, Ontario. Hello there.
Hello, Bruce. How are you?
I love this conversation. I don't know if it makes me I'm not a conflict seeker, but I'm very curious about how people deal with conflict, how people deal with difficult conversations. And I love that we're going to have this opportunity to talk about that. I want to begin by asking how you came into this conversation. What was the insight that brought you to focusing on enabling people to get better at this?
Well, it was actually it was an event that happened in my life, a very unexpected event. I was in the financial services industry, had been in for a while, thought I was, got everything, all my I's dotted and my T's crossed and whatever. And my 39-year-old husband went out the door on a Sunday morning, kissed my daughter and I goodbye. And that afternoon, a policeman walked up my driveway and informed me that he had been killed in an accident that morning. So in less than 60 seconds, the life that I thought I had was completely turned on its head. And I was suddenly a widow with a 12-year-old and a financial tsunami coming my way. So I had to walk the walk and talk the talk, because I had been telling people for years to be prepared and whatever. And I found out that I wasn't quite as prepared as I thought I was. So I got blindsided by a few things. So I thought, if moving forward, I'm happily remarried to another widow that was married to my girlfriend, whom we lost to cancer. So we've got this whole, two widows and a child who lost her dad under one roof. So I came to the realization one day I had to pay it forward. I had to take what happened to us and I had to help others never to have to go through what we went through. And hence was born the book.
Wow. Well, such a contribution to people, and bringing the perspective of your grief into being so helpful to others is fantastic. And I want to highlight some of the ways in which you do that. So, where does this start for people when you're talking about difficult conversations, where you're bringing people together to engage in this topic? Where do you start?
Well, I have been coined as a catalyst for courageous conversations, because that's what they are. These are really courageous conversations. Right. And that's a very good question, Bruce, because they start here. They start with you first.
Yeah.
You have to have the conversation with yourself first, because you have to be able to tell others what's important, what you want. My husband would never talk about funeral arrangements. He was never going to die. So I had to, do all of these things blindly. So it starts here with what you want. Then it's your family. And you sit down and you have a family discussion, because in a lot of cases, people won't talk even inside of their own families about this kind of stuff because it's emotional, or in some cultures, don't talk about it because if you do, it'll happen. So you have to have a way to have a family conversation. And so I try to help people with that. And then you have to know how to have conversations with the 4 key legs of planning, I call it. One is a financial advisor, a lawyer, an accountant, and talk about pre-planning a funeral. I found out the hard way that on average, you make 96 decisions when you're planning a funeral.
Wow.
I was and gobsmacked, and I didn't know what he wanted. So
right. And at a time in which your capacity to make all those decisions would be diminished.
I couldn't decide what vegetable I wanted for dinner. For 3 months. And here I am making all of these monumental decisions.
What role does persistence play in having these courageous conversations? And I ask because in some families, you're going to get a no, and then you're going to try again, and you're going to get another no. It's something that you may have to work on and chip away at over the course of perhaps a long period of time.
Don't try to force the subject. Be careful in the situations that you bring it up. Don't try to bring it up in a high stress, try to bring it up when maybe you have the family together and you're having a meal or something. And you don't have to come, right out the gate and say, okay, this is what I want to have happen if I die. But you can, everybody's got a story of somebody that they can share with their family or whatever. You might have heard that so-and-so got sick, it's been hard on them and whatever. But persistent is a very good word to use. Don't give up. And yes, you're going to get some pushback, and you might even make some people angry with you. But I remember very good friends of mine, I tried for 6 months to have a conversation with them about financial planning after I became an advisor, and I always got pushback. And finally, I invited my friend to go to a seminar with me that was being given in my office by some other financial advisors. So I sat in the audience with her. Next morning, I got a phone call. You need to come over. We need to talk to you. And unfortunately, that was my very first death claim in the business, because they lost their 8-week-old son to SIDS. And she thanked me years and years later and said, thank you for not giving up on us.
Talk a bit more about, you mentioned 4 different roles. Some people have all 4, some people have none of them. How do you engage them in the way that they're going to be most helpful? And I will say, my experience is there is a real spectrum or a continuum in terms of those professionals that you mentioned and their ability to engage in courageous conversations, even if they do it every day. Some of them are amazing at it, and some really, really are not.
Well, I'm going to put in a little plug for the book, if you don't mind.
Please.
As what I was up against when I was trying to write this book was I didn't want to just tell the story, because people pat you on the arm and say, I'm sorry for your loss, and walk away. I wanted to affect change, but I realized that people were afraid of this conversation. So I had to try to take the angst out of it. So I thought about my own situation and whatever. So at the back of the book, there's a 33-page master checklist of questions, courageous questions to ask yourself, to have conversations with your family. But what kind of questions should you be asking of financial advisors, lawyers, of those 4 legs? Because back to your point, they don't always go down the path you need them to go down. But you also have to have a roadmap for you to go down that path. So it's to get the conversation. These are thought-provoking conversations and questions, and they're not a yes or a no answer.
What would be an example of some of those questions that you're a catalyst for getting communicated between people?
Okay, so I'm going to use the financial advisor leg because I've got a lot of experience in that one. And when I was an advisor and I was meeting with people and having courageous conversations for them to get their, life insurance or financial planning in place and whatever, instead of just asking the question, do you want to make sure that if anything happens to your family will be provided for? The next question, and I call it peeling the onion, is, okay, your children are X age and X age. What do you see for them? Would you like this income that you want to replace to continue till they're this age or that age? Or do you want them to be, supported through university? Your wife or your spouse, your partner, is a stay-at-home parent. Do they plan to go back to work after something happens to you? And if so, are they going to have to find a new career or retrain or whatever? So it's asking different questions and making people think differently and talk to each other differently, because that's more than, do you want them to have some money if something happens to you?
To use a sporting metaphor, sometimes you get thrown off the horse. How do you get back on the horse when the conversation goes awry? Sometimes it goes awry.
Well, it does. And that's why I always say to people, have a plan, sit down, think about what you want to do. Don't go in just off the cuff. Write down what's important to you. Make sure that you go through it. Talk to somebody. If you don't have a financial advisor, ask for somebody to introduce you to someone they know, like, and trust. But you've got to, you can't just, this isn't a willy-nilly type of a conversation, if I can use that term. This requires some thought process. And to go back to what you mentioned before, and what I said, when you can't decide what vegetable you want for dinner, then you really need somebody helping you along the way. And that's engaging. My sister did a lot of stuff with me. and my financial advisor was amazing. But I needed somebody with me to help me to remember the things I'd heard because,
Mm.
you know, so there's a number of factors that play in here.
Sure. I lost my mom in April, and we had had these conversations for a decade. And many, I mean, they weren't difficult. They weren't courageous. We cackled like school children because that's the relationship that we had. It's very easy for us to have these conversations. But what was so helpful in the days after she died was I had them written down. I don't have to remember anything. So, can you speak a bit about what the records are of those conversations? With me, with my mom, I was literally typing on my computer while we had these quite hilarious conversations sometimes. What recommendation would you have for people in terms of taking notes? Because I don't know, couldn't decide what vegetable to have, but I also don't think I could have remembered the things that she had said.
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up because a lot of people who read the book came back to me and said, okay, tell me to write everything down and get all this stuff and all these documents. I'm overwhelmed. Where do I start? So I created a planning binder that goes along with the check, like the questions in the book. And it's a roadmap for people to record all of this stuff. There's 14 different sections. You know, where's all the pertinent information? Who are your advisors? Where's your banking? Where's your insurance? Where's this? But it's all for you to write down. And it's also thought-provoking reminders to ask certain questions. And it's just write it down. And if you don't have something like that, write it down. Take a pad of paper in with you. And the other thing I've also done is in the back of the book, there's notes pages. So when you go to see all these advisors and the financial advisor says, now go see your lawyer about a will, you can make the notes. I'm trying to get people not to have 49, little sticky papers that are stuff. It's centralized. If nothing else, get a book, but just put it in one place and have it handy.
Really, really helpful stuff. Jane, thank you for joining us to talk about it today.
Thank you, Bruce, for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Jane Blaufus is the author of With the Stroke of a Pen, Claim Your Life. And she was here to talk about some of the courageous conversations that will make such an extraordinary difference to you and the people that you love.